Hi everybody, Jim Stavridis, the Dean of the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts University. Wanted to continue a series that we've begun a while ago where we ask some of our alumni and even some of our students, why Fletcher? What made them choose this magnificent school? There's some very interesting answers that also illuminate how a Fletcher degree changes your life. It's how you come to know the world from the Fletcher School. Listen to this terrific Why Fletcher. And we're here today with someone who is not only an alumni, but also a very good friend, Thom Shanker. Thom and I were classmates together at the Fletcher School 30 years ago. And Thom has gone on to really a remarkable career in journalism as the top security writer of his generation for the New York Times. Thom, it's great to have you here.
Well, thank you very much, and I want to point out the delightful professional irony that after me posing questions to you for 20 years, the tables are turned and now you can ask me anything that you want.
Fabulous. Well, let me start with a question that I love to ask our alums, which is, how did you hear about the Fletcher School and what kind of brought you to Fletcher, Thom?
Sure. I was a night police reporter in Oklahoma City, paying my dues, learning the trade of being a newspaper man. I knew I always wanted to be a foreign correspondent, and truly my lifelong dream was to be New York Times Pentagon correspondent.
Yeah, wow.
And so I knew that to get there I would need not just professional skills, but a set of academic and intellectual credentials. I looked at all the foreign policy schools, and they're all terrific, Jim, but I just decided that Fletcher had the best mix of security studies and international law, and was simply my only choice.
I also remember when we were students there that you put together the Cold War Film Festival. What was your favorite movie from the group of films that we showed?
Well, I would like to say it was Dr. Strangelove because of the great irony, but actually it was Failsafe because it showed that even the best planning can sometimes go awry with disastrous results.
Yeah.
And that's a cautionary note for all of us.
Indeed it is. Well, speaking of cautionary notes, you and our mutual friend Eric Schmidt wrote a book together. Say a word about that because it was very well received in the national security establishment.
Well, and actually there's a very relevant Fletcher angle there. Eric and I spent 10 years after 9/11 covering the global war on terror, the fight against Al-Qaeda, however you want to describe it. And I was looking for a way to bring that decade of work together. And actually it was the security studies I had at Fletcher that offered me the idea for a framework which was to apply tools of deterrence and deterrence thinking, which had kept a very tense nuclear peace with the Soviet Union for decades, and to see whether there was something you could say about the broader terror war through that prism would also allow us to talk about the 10-year war against Al-Qaeda.
And the title of the book was?
Was Counterstrike, the untold story of America's secret campaign against Al-Qaeda.
Yeah, I highly, highly recommend it. Thom, let me kind of shift gears and ask what you're doing now, because you've had a little change of responsibility within the wonderful New York Times family.
Right. Well, in your Navy world, you'd say I was fleeted up. Whether it's a promotion, you can decide. But after 13 very rewarding but exhausting years covering the Pentagon and deployed American forces in Iraq and Afghanistan, you and I would see each other downrange all the time. It was time for a good professional change. And so now I'm an editor here in the New York Times Washington Bureau, helping guide reporters, manage our news and edit stories. In particular, my job is to aim the big projects to the Sunday New York Times, which is the marquee edition of our newspaper.
Ah, that's so impressive. Well, let me ask you one last question, which is taking us back to the Fletcher School. As you know, for years we've had the Murrow Center, which is kind of public diplomacy, and I like to think also a way to think about how your world, the one you lived in for so many years, influences events. We'd like to revitalize that and bring more energy to it. Does that make sense? Do you think that's an important thing to do?
I think it is an absolutely brilliant idea, and it's also necessary right now. We've talked about all the tools of national power that Fletcher has taught, whether it's the military line, the economic line, the diplomacy. I think we see with all of the threats today, whether it's Russia and its information campaign in Ukraine, whether it's ISIS and their very smart social media. I think the broad public diplomacy, information, international communications is going to be an ever more important part of foreign policy, and I would just hope that the Murrow Center can become the place where people come for that conversation.
Well, hold that thought. Would like to get you involved. And I know I can say for all of us how proud we are of the extraordinary career you've had and you continue to have with the New York Times. Tom, thanks for coming back.
It was a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks.